I'm here because I am a roaring lion crying out righteousness. There's a deep pain coming to America because of a food shortage, and it's a result of the war that's going on in Ukraine at present. It's a global war, and I did a piece last week about how much is this war going to cost you. Gas prices have reached an all-time high. I think AAA had placed a gallon of unleaded gas at more than $4.50. I don't think it's ever been that high, and getting higher. And not because we have a shortage of gas and octane for gas for running automobiles, petroleum for running automobiles, but the greedy. There is a greed. There is a greed in people, that business people, when they see such an event such as the war in Ukraine, where Russia has stopped supplying America with 8 to 9% of our gasoline supply for our automobiles and oil for our furnaces, they've now jacked the price. Rather than saying, well, we're going to lower our prices, we made several $1 billion in profit last year, we're going to lower our prices so that people can still live. They jacked them up because there's a greed. I watched something, I watched the event about, inside the mind of Vladimir Putin this past Sunday night. And Elizabeth asked me after the presentation, our presentation, what did I think about it? And I didn't think it was such a good presentation in terms of a scholarly, if you will, presentation, which Fareed Zakaria is a scholar, there's no doubt about it. He's a brilliant man in terms of intellectual strength, and I would never try to take that away from him. But the one thing I did learn as I watched Putin walking up in the Kremlin, up that red carpet, I mean, it goes like 5 stories high, and he starts at the bottom, and then he's got all these very special, goosey-looking guards that open the door, these big gold doors for him. And I saw him walking up that red carpet, and it's a lavish, beautiful setting, what Putin finds himself in. And I thought to myself, I said, I would never desire, to actually have that as something personal for myself. It's not something that would run across my mind. I mean, I'm comfortable in the house Elizabeth and I stay in. It's a split level flat here on 123rd Street in Harlem, and I'm very comfortable there. Could it be bigger or better? I think the engineer has those gold doors and that red carpeting, but it also goes upstairs, and it's a hike. And I understood greed then more than I have ever understood it. I don't have it. But there's something else that we need to know about why this deep pain is coming to America, and it's going to come. Because of the greed of politicians, the greed of bankers, the greed of people in general. The reason why I would not need to live in a house like that is because I'm comfortable with Jesus. I'm satisfied with Jesus. I'm satisfied with Jesus. I also watched the coming to Finding Italy with Stanley Tucci. Lord, I know his name is Tucci. Anyway, and he was in Umbria, Italy, the home of St. Francis, who lived in Assisi, who denounced his own particular wealth, like Mother Teresa, and went out and served the poor. Because when you're comfortable with Jesus, when you're comfortable in your own skin, you don't need all that red carpet. You don't need all that ornateness. You don't need people bowing down. You don't need all of that. You don't need all of that yachts and big houses. And you don't, when you're comfortable. And the reason why I know for myself, I don't need that. I'm comfortable with what God has given to me. But there's a sense of greed among men. And it was interesting to watch the difference between Vladimir Putin in Moscow and the ancients of Umbria and Assisi, of St. Francis, the Catholic bishop of Assisi, and how he gave up everything to serve the poor. And quite frankly, not to compare myself to St. Francis of Assisi, but I have given up a lot to serve the people of Harlem and the Hamite people in particular. And I love all God's people, the Shemites, the Japheth people. I love all of God's people. But I've given up. I live here with them. I walk the streets with them. I don't need to live in a white neighborhood with a big house and a picket fence. That doesn't bring me a sense of self. When you're empty on the inside, you try to put all these things around you, wealth and accumulation. You do all those things to try to make yourself feel good when you're empty. And Putin is an empty man, but he's not the only one. All politicians are empty people, all of them. I think that you have to have a certain amount of greed and emptiness and deceitfulness to be one. So, having said that, that's what's happening. That's the satanic work behind the war that's going on in Ukraine. That's the satanic work behind the fact that Russia, Vladimir Putin, has a power, has an economic stronghold over the West, over Europe and over America and Africa as well. He has an economic stronghold. And even if he never took Ukraine in totality, by having a war in Ukraine and blocking the ports of Odessa, no ships can get in to ship away the massive amount of grain that is grown in Ukraine, which becomes the breadbasket for Africa, for India, and for other nations. Without that Ukrainian wheat that is grown, and there's going to be famine in Africa worse than the Ethiopian famine. And Russia and Vladimir Putin controls that. Now, you can look at all the stuff going on CNN and all these other people talking about how the war is being won by the Ukrainians. You can believe that if you want. But it ain't true. It's propaganda, what you're hearing. Vladimir Putin has his foot on the neck of Germany, of Finland, of England, of France, of Italy. He's got his foot on their necks by the fact they get all of their heating oil, all the petrol to run their automobiles. They get it from Russia, and he can turn off the tap. If he turns off the tap, these nations are pretty much at his mercy now. So it ain't what you've been hearing. That's why you won't listen to me. But the absence, the Abbott baby formula Enfamil manufacturing plant was shut down, and it's presently shut down, and is now causing in some states a shortage of baby food. The shelves are empty. And it is so, Ukraine will not be back in the business anytime soon of shipping that wheat to Africa. It will not be back in the business. So that means that Africans who ought to be growing their own wheat, by the way, who are dependent on Ukraine to make their bread, going to have to get their wheat from someplace else. But once you get a shortage, you get Africa going to try to buy from Europe or from America. That's going to create a shortage. That's going to raise the prices in America for a loaf of bread or for pizza. The price is going to go through the roof. But even with the prices going through the roof, it's not going to be enough to feed everybody because Russia withholds. Now, you say, well, Russia withholding Ukraine's grain and some grain coming from Russia as well means that Russia is not going to have the money they need to do what they need to do. I think they're prepared to wait that one out. So what happens is over the next, we are met with a tsunami, if you will, a perfect storm. We have got inflation at 10%. What used to cost $50 now costs $55. What used to cost $100 now costs $110. And that's moderately on some items. We've got the war in Ukraine that is upsetting all people globally, but especially Europe and the NATO nations. And then, of course, we got the economic food issues. We got energy prices going through the roof. We got the absence of energy flow. And if Europe goes dark, if Putin turns off the tap and Europe goes cold, I mean, then the war, it gets extended. And there are reports now that COVID-19 is on the rise again. I just saw a report before I came on the air today stated that New York City has now raised the threat level of COVID-19 to high. Got to put the mask back on. Got to shut down them restaurants. That's right here in New York City because people are getting COVID-19, going to hospitals and dying. Got to talk to Elder LaFleur about our school. So you got all this going on at the same time. The inflation, COVID-19, the war in Ukraine, rising gas price, shortages of food. All that's going to play out over the next 2 years like a nightmare like you've never seen before. And rightly so, according to tribulation. But I have to tell you this, that the war in Ukraine, one of the things that we need to understand is this, is that America is fighting Russia. Now, y'all listen to me very carefully. I'm not un-American. Amen. Everybody knows I'm red-blooded. Everybody, I'm American. I'm a flag-waving, apple pie eating, take me out to the ball game, God bless America singing young man. I love America, but in the sense of, being a citizen of America. But I want to tell you, I'm not un-American. Because of course, what I'm getting ready to say now, I'm going to tell you the truth about America, is that America fooled around there when Putin decided to go into Ukraine, primarily because of Joe Biden, primarily because of Joe Biden involvement with Zelensky, Zelensky's involvement with Joe Biden's son, and all that money, $500,000, I think, a week or a month, $500,000 a month that Zelensky was paying Joe Biden's son to just sit on the energy crisis board of the Ukraine energy sources. Now, Tribulation Trump tried to point all that out, but they kept fighting it back. But the Biden family had made millions of dollars out of Ukraine. So when Putin decided to invade Ukraine, Biden suspected that all the truth about him and his son might be unearthed. So he made a commitment to secretly help Zelensky in Ukraine with intelligence, with weapons, and with men well-trained and skilled at fighting alongside the Ukrainian soldiers. That ship, the Moskva, that was sank off of the coast of Odessa going back a couple of weeks ago, that major flagship, that America sank that ship. And what happens is that Putin never thought that Biden would, actually, America is fighting Russia. The Ukrainians are just in the middle as a campaign. This is America and Russia fighting one another. A normal, maybe Tribulation Trump would never gone to that, or somebody else, maybe Barack Hussein, a long-legged Mac Daddy Obama would have never done what Joe Biden is doing. Biden is fighting Russia. That's right. And you keep hearing them saying the Ukrainians are winning. And by the way, the city of Mariupol just finally fell. After all the weeks of them bombing it, some 5,500 soldiers and they're holding out, they finally surrendered. My question, if you're going to surrender now, why didn't you surrender a month ago before they had killed all 400 or 500 of you? And the other thing is this, that you need to know about the Ukrainians, about this war, is that, again, I told you I'm not un-American, is that right? I have to tell you that because some of y'all got a short memory. Zelensky and the Western world media and NATO said every Ukrainian, grandma Ukrainian, any man over 18 and under 60 should pick up arms, even though you're not in the military, pick up arms and fight the invading Russians. Okay, sounds noble, sounds like a good idea, but check this out. If you got 35-year-old women in an apartment building in Kharkiv shooting out the window at a Russian soldier, then that building is a military target that can be hit with Russian tanks and tearing up them apartments, women and babies and children. Because once you militarize, once you deputize, once you put into the military everybody under the age of 60 and put a rifle in their hand and tell them to fight, then there ain't this is not a genocide, humanitarian genocide. Listen, these people are shooting at Russian soldiers. The tank has a right to shoot back at that apartment building and blow up the smithereens. They're trying to make it on the news like, oh, how often is it? Oh, how dead people. You know, you got old men riding bicycles, delivering supplies. They shoot him too. He's over 60, but he's delivering supplies to the young boys. Shoot him. The Russians are shooting. But you ain't going to get that from Western media. Well, they're not going to tell you that. You might wake up and have some sense. They're not going to tell you that. But I'm telling you. So I think we need to look at the propaganda that is going on. Now, and that's one other thing that I'm going to turn y'all loose because I figure y'all got something else to do. You know, NATO has 30 nations. Now I'm talking about Finland and Sweden, Helsinki and Stockholm now. They're talking about, well, we want to join NATO. They weren't NATO, and from the formation of NATO going back to the Second World War, Finland and Sweden have remained neutral. They were non-NATO, they didn't want to be a part of it. They didn't want to be involved with America, and you can't hardly blame them. But now they say they want to join. So that would mean that NATO would have 30 nations. Now, I have to tell you, if you go down to the United Nations, there's 188 to 192 flags down there right here in New York City around the United Nations, a flag for each nation. Only 30 nations belong to NATO. Now, there's some pretty powerful ones, like America, like France, like England, they're pretty powerful. Then they got a whole lot of small ones as well that are part of NATO. Got a nation like Turkey. But check this out. Of the 100, and let's round it off, the 190 nations on the planet that have a seat at the United Nations, only 30 of them have united against Russia. Where's the other 150? Where's the nation, the world's largest democracy, which is India, over there in Punjab land, right? Prime Minister Modi, he ain't lift his voice against Russia or against Putin because he gets his arms from Russia. He gets his Kalashnikovs from Russia, whatever they call the rifle, the K-14, AK-47s. He gets his fuel, he gets his wheat, he gets his food, he gets his honey and his money from Russia. He ain't joining America and NATO. He ain't gonna say a word against Putin. But not only India, the world's largest democracy, Israel. Well, ain't that nothing? The land of the three world's great religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, ain't said a word against Russia. That's right, haven't joined the United Nations against the NATO nations against Russia because they get their supplies, they get their weapons from Russia, and they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. And then, of course, there's great big old China, Red China sitting up yonder, with Xi Jinping. He's thinking about doing the same thing to Taiwan that Putin has done to Ukraine. So he ain't said nothing. So, when you scale it back and look at it, the nations that probably really matter are not for America, and they're not for Ukraine. They are quasi, if you will, or quietly for Putin. So Putin got more folk on his side than America and Biden has on his side. And then the other thing is that America is secretly fighting and sinking ships and killing the generals. And this took Putin by surprise. Even Putin didn't figure this one out, that America would do this. But Biden is hiding something. Biden is hiding whatever the relationship with his son and Zelensky. Biden is hiding something. So Biden is using military might, if you will, satellite images and intelligence and a bunch of other things. Ukrainians are valiant. They're great fighting men. They're blowing up the Russian tanks. Okay, you believe that. You believe that. But I thought I would want to say that to you, to pull your coat. What does that have to do with the food shortages? It's coming. It's coming. And not only food shortages, but if the prices are so high, you can't buy it anyway. There might as well be a shortage. And there's very little potential to turn around the inflation. Most people think, most economists think, the inflation we have now, where you used to pay $5, $50 for something, you're paying $55. Where you used to pay $100 for something, you're paying $110. That's only going to keep rising. Where you used to pay $100, you're not paying $140. At that point, you're not going to be able to buy it. If you buy that, you won't be able to buy anything else. And that's going to continue to rise to the point where the whole the economy of America just explodes, and then we're going to what is known as a recession, when nobody got any money, nobody's manufacturing anything. Stores and businesses are closing, and it's receding. The economy is going back into a dark place called recession, and it can get worse than that. It can go to a place called darker than that, called depression. And there's very little economically that you can do about this, even without the war in Ukraine. Economies go up, economies go down. It's been that way since time immemorial. It was like that. Listen, they had famines in Egypt. They had famines, not only famines in Egypt, but they had famines all over the Middle East during the days of Joseph, during the days of Moses, during the days of Daniel, and during the days of the prophet. There was famines and economic bad times in the Bible prophets. So you're going to have these no matter what. Economic disparities, ups and downs. And America hasn't had its worst since the 1930s. Well, it's been 100 years. We're ready for another 100-year depression like it was. So you need to get ready and learn how to protect yourself, because it's coming. And the COVID-19 thing, I'm so sick and tired of this COVID-19 thing. That thing got me strapped down. I can't go nowhere. I haven't been in a public restaurant in 2.5 years. This is absolute stomp down truth. I'm trying to figure out if I walked in and wanted to buy something. I'm tired of this. But listen, I don't want to die. I got too much. I want to keep on living for Jesus, and I want to keep on preaching what I'm preaching here. And but I have to tell you that it's coming, my brothers, and it's coming, my sisters. So get ready. Learn how to protect yourself. And stay tuned to the Manning Report. I'll give you updates from day to day. But you can't believe what you see on the Western media. You can't believe what you're listening to on CNN and MSNBC and some of these other news outlets. They lying to you. And Biden has gotten us into this. I don't know what Biden is hiding, but Biden is hiding something, and he has taken upon himself to actually fight Russia. America and Russia are at war with one another. They say it's Ukraine and Russia, but that ain't. It's America, because Biden is hiding. Anyway, everybody, I'm James David Manning. I'm the Lord's servant. Let me just say this. I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not a Democrat. Definitely ain't that. I'm not a Republican. Sure enough, stomped on ain't that. I'm not a liberal. Ain't gonna never be. And I'm not a conservative. I'm not that. I'm not a red boy or a blue boy. I'm the Lord's servant. Listen, I'm not here in support of Joe Biden and Camelback ain't Black Harris. The last thing on the planet Earth would be I'd be supporting them. I'm not. I don't have anything kind to say about them. I'm not here in support of Trump or any of the Trump supporters. I'm the Lord's servant. I ain't on nobody's side. I'm on the Lord's side. Let's be clear. All right? They'll be calling me a Biden supporter and I done flipped the wig and this, that, and the other. I did endorse Trump. I'll admit that. I did, but not now.